Thank you very much, you guys. Always a pleasure getting that historical take on things and have a greater understanding of where we came from. Those of you that know me know I don't have filters and I'm not much one for rules. So here I am at the 11th hour and I'm going to change things up a little bit. I want to try to keep this event exciting, something new every year. And my main goal is that our message go out accurately. That this celebration that we're having today be portrayed as such. The historical value that exists within it. The assertiveness in that, boy, you can just feel the blood pumping through your veins and that heritage, the feeling that the founders must have had as they secured the liberty in this country. The First Amendment was put in place to make sure that there's one mechanism to secure that we're allowed to use our voices anywhere and everywhere, to sit in the public common, to peaceably assemble and discuss the issues of the day. The press is given special protections. It is critically important, and it must be important. It was number one, that they be able to report what is going on, to get it out to the people so these public dialogues can take place. I put out a press release for this event. They called my friends with Oath Keepers. Any Oath Keepers here today? I called them an anti-government group. And I asked Sheriff Joe Arpaio to come out because, you see, Title 8, Section 1324, subsection A1 describes the felony that is being committed when you shelter and coddle illegals. You know, and I'm telling you, some people are going, what the heck, Dave's up there about to advocate for a federal law. Well, you're right. Usually I'm one for keeping the federal government in a very small box. When it comes to land and property, it bothers me that the Department of the Interior even exists. The Bureau of Land Management is out harassing people like one of our other guests here, Jeanette Finicum and her family. All right? They got 10 miles square post offices and post roads, and I say we've been more than generous. They got too much already. Well, what I want to do is I'm an old homeboy from Belchertown here. Chad, Belchertown Sentinel, come up here, please. Nissa, Valley Advocate, come on up. Come on up. We're going to have some fun. Yeah. You came up for interviews, and I'm going to grant your interview right now in front of everybody. Come on up. And thank you. Chad, I was born and raised here in Belchertown. My great-grandfather, constable for over 20 years in this town. Yet when they portrayed me in some of the papers, it was like I was an outsider. That I couldn't care about my community. I must, to have a Second Amendment rally and invite such questionable and confrontational guests, that I must be some kind of an outsider that just has a disconnection. Well, I'm connected. What I want to do is give a very fair, open, and transparent. Please don't say no. Come up and join us on the stage. Come on, I encourage you to come up here. Come on, Nissa. Come on up. This is going to be fun. We're going to have, it's a celebration. It's about fun. I'm not here to do a hatchet job on anyone. I want you to ask your questions, and I'm going to answer them for you.
Come on, there you go.
Is that fair? Excellent. Okay. Fire away. Chad asked me first. Chad, what's your question for me?
In one sentence, describe what today is.
Today is a celebration of a God-given right that is enumerated in the Constitution. It is a celebration and to encourage my friends to assert that right and to do it responsibly and with love in their heart.
How do you feel like the current political climate affects the importance of this rally?
Can you repeat the question?
She asked how the political climate affects this rally. the political climate is as bad and chaotic as I've ever seen it. I'm seeing things now that I've never seen in my life before. I am seeing our public servants, and I stopped calling them elected officials. I now only call them public servants because they are there to serve, are actually sending their supporters out into the streets to break the law, to cause violence. So I think the political environment requires that people like me do things like this.
That's right.
Now, I ask that question back to both of you. What do you think the political environment means to the Second Amendment or any of the amendments of the Constitution? Fair enough? What do you think?
I think the First Amendment is really important. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, that's a good answer. She feels that it is important. It is. It's number one. I'm sure this is on.
Does it in any way make it harder for some people to feel able to practice their First Amendment rights in light of the ways in which Second Amendment rights are often used?
Give me an example. I want to make sure I follow your question.
Well, the ways in which those two things are connected can be sort of complicated. Does it sometimes introduce the idea of violence to connect the Second Amendment, which is about firearms, to the question of the First Amendment?
Well, good question. Very good question. I think the First Amendment and Second Amendment were put in the order that they're in because it was preferred by our founders, that we use our intellect and our voices, and that we are given that public square and that ability to speak freely to preferably hash out the problems that our nation has.
Sure.
The Second Amendment, I believe, is in place in case tyranny begins to take hold. When they begin to legislate and make legal those things that are tyrannical. And it gives those folks with a gun an opportunity to still vote. And what we have is a situation where, and going back to your question about the political environment, we're often trapped and put into a box, and our discussions of the Second Amendment have to do with regulations in the Fisheries and Wildlife Manual. And I got to be very clear, and I've said this at every rally, every year, the Second Amendment was primarily put in place for killing tyrants, to protect us from tyranny.
One question I have is this, do you feel that this rally is here to perhaps win the support or convince people that might be skeptical? Or is it here as a celebration for those that are already convinced? Or is this also a platform for convincing those that aren't, that are skeptical?
No, for both. For both, I'd like to strengthen those that understand the importance but are a little apprehensive to use that voice to support and defend our right. But we have things like the first timer shoot. Last year we had numerous people that came out who have never shot a gun, some very afraid of weapons and had this unreasonable fear, who sat there in a very controlled, safe environment with professionals and shot a gun for the very first time. And this may happen several times. I'm not one that force my ideas in someone else's head. Is liberty through acclamation. And so to answer your question, it's both. Those that are in the know and realize the importance of that amendment and most of them in the Constitution, to help give them that fire within to keep up the fight. But at the same time, I'm not a hater. Just because someone don't want to own a gun or whatever, that's fine with me. I just don't want them to take that right from me. But I would like those that are concerned with their personal security, concerned with their nation, to have a comfortable, safe place where they can go and be with like-minded people. I hope you spent some time walking around shaking hands today, and as you go out and you report on this, Just report on it accurately. Talk about the people that you met and what lives in their heart. Nissa, you've asked only one question here. I want to be fair.
You guys can hear me.
Good enough. Is this mic on?
Here,
come right over here. I'll share this mic with you here.
Sorry. Yeah, so as far as the first time thing goes, is that happening today? If so, where? Because we had been contacted by the Belchertown police who said that they were not, so I was just curious, is that going on, or?
Well, I think there was some early confusion. There was an officer that's doing this. It's not the station itself. We have different volunteers every year. So this is not something that was endorsed or booked by a particular municipal corporation. This is an individual who's helping us out. Are you going to go down and give it a try?
I'm generally non-participatory at the events I come to.
Oh, okay.
Go shoot a gun.
This being an exception.
Well, yeah, this is a public interview.
It's too late. You crossed that bridge. You're on stage, dear. So go down and take a shot. The folks down there will be very happy to share that experience with you.
Well, even if she doesn't want to do it because she feels she doesn't want to, at least go down and see what's going on and how it's done. So
Yep.
then you can report it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not just out in the woods capping off. It's very safe, and the professionals are involved. And all gun owners are like that. We don't want to make a mistake with our firearms that would give impetus for them to come back and with regulation. You find that the firearm owners are many times more protective of the sentiment that lives around that Second Amendment than most would give us credit for. More questions. This is all about transparency, and I want to answer every question you've got today.
Is there anything about the way in which this is organized, or perhaps some of the opinions, thoughts being expressed that aren't explicitly about the Second Amendment that might alienate moderate gun owners or even left-leaning gun owners who believe in the Second Amendment strongly, but perhaps disagree with some of the other sentiments being expressed, or some of the sentiments expressed by people invited here this year, perhaps last year? We're under a big tent, but is this event a big tent event?
It really is. I try to bring diversity to every agenda. My open conspiracy, and I've been very clear about this, is that I use great national celebrities, Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America, Sheriff Joe, Stuart Rhodes, Jeanette Finicum, great patriots, and have been out there fighting the fight for a long time, and I bring them here to attract the crowds. And then my little conspiracy is I got people like my next speaker, Mr. Chris Pinto, Kirk Watley, who's coming up, all right, Hal Shirtliff from Camp Constitution. I attract the crowds, and these guys put them to work. That's what it is, because when we come up here, we celebrate today, but we don't go home and clickety-clack on Facebook. That's not going to do it anymore, folks. If you leave this rally today, and you go home and you grab your remote control and sit on the friggin' couch, you're going to lose, all right? Meet the people next to you, shake hands with the people at the table with you, and network with these speakers. That's why they're here, so that we can be actionable and do something good when they leave. So what do you think? Have you bumped into any racists today? That's what I keep hearing in the paper. And I gotta know, because I value my credibility and my myself, to protect my image.
Did you invite Jan Morgan last year?
Yes, I did.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but she banned Muslims from her gun range, correct?
Yes, she did.
I would like for you to differentiate that from racism.
Oh, absolutely. Very good question. Because that gained a lot of ire from people. The first thing that happened when she banned Muslims from her range was, that she was being racist. And
Islam is not a race; it's a creed. First of all.
Without opining on that aspect of it, I am going to talk about the economics of it. This is a woman who runs a business, a legitimate business, And every decision that she makes is going to lead to that business either becoming stronger and growing, or it's going to go downhill. When you have an entity, and I'm going to be very generic and just refer to that as an entity, who has official documents that calls on them, I believe no less than 109 times, to kill non-believers, it became a business decision not to have, if you and I were standing next to each other at her range, she did not want someone who is pledged to kill somebody with a handgun next to her customers. That was a business decision. If there were Muslims that did not want to kill and believed in a document that called for that, I don't think she would have made that decision. This was purely a business decision for the security of her paying customers.
Private business has every right to decide who they sell to and who they will not
I
sell
think
to.
she would ban anybody from her range who endorsed violence of any type or flavor, regardless of their color or religious background. I think that would have been an economic decision that she made. I wouldn't go to a range if it were a flip of a coin that the guy sitting next to me might wish ill will on his fellow man.
A flip of a coin. So you think it's a 50-50 proposition whether or not a Muslim American wants to kill a non-Muslim?
Yeah, I use the flip of the coin because it's an unknown. I'm not putting a number
I want to
to
be as
it.
accurate as possible.
Yeah. Did you know I have 4 black cousins? No, I do. And it bothers me when people call me a racist too. I love those little kids. Your turn, dear. Now wait a minute, I'm leaving someone out. Right over here, Amherst Media. Come on, I almost forgot about you guys. I need a representation up here from you guys. Welcome this gentleman here from Amherst Media. We got some questions to catch you up on. You must have a question for us here. Step up and let's get this done.
Yeah, that's good questions, and I'd like to think about some good questions myself.
Okay.
A question I have, I had actually called ahead to let the organization know that I'd be here to ask questions. Can you clarify for me whether or not you had asked me if you would be calling me up on stage before you did so?
No.
So to continue on the point of distinguishing the purpose of this event from ideologies represented by different speakers, can you just talk about if this event is about the Second Amendment, how that intersects or doesn't intersect with the very famous tactics of Sheriff Joe and his Sheriff's Department, and how those do or don't intersect with the values of the Second Amendment?
It's completely separate.
Oh, well, if it's completely separate, I would wonder why it was invited.
No, I asked Sheriff Joe to come up here because we have on the borders of this nation good people, property owners, that are having their properties destroyed and sometimes killed dead on their own land by illegals coming over the border. And gun control is a national crisis. It isn't just in a single state. So there are elements of the Second Amendment and many issues that you might not think exist. But I did want to have Sheriff Joe up here because this is a problem on our borders. Innocent people are being impacted by the intentional neglect and ignorance of federal law. I mentioned the Title 8, 1324. Sheriff Joe is only enforcing that federal law. And my question to you would be to go back to your papers, to the municipalities that you serve, and ask them point blank. We can go to Northampton or any one of these cities that call themselves sanctuaries. Have one person in that town go to a town meeting, stand up and demand of their elected representatives to ask their town council, does this or does this not violate Title 8, Section 1324. And I love watching lawyers, when you ask them these questions, their little buttholes pucker right up like that, boy. Because there's no good answer to give.
Your facts hurt my feelings.
That's right. So I would, press on these things. We got a federal law that's being violated. Your job as the press is to dig into why, and if that is acceptable, to present that story to the public for debate and to understand. Have you written one article that references the federal law as being violated by illegal immigration?
Well, I just have a question. Should local law enforcement be responsible for enforcing federal law when that's generally set to people like Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers?
I do not think that our public servants should be telling them not to.
That's right.
If there is a person, and I don't care what color they are, whether they're legal or illegal, if there's someone committing a crime, they are supposed to be there to make corrections and deal with that. So to turn a blind eye just because it's a federal law, I don't think is right. I don't think those officials that tell their police officers, their law enforcement officers, not to enforce a particular law, how can that be right? Have you got your question yet?
Well, just in general, what would you like to tell, well, I represent the media of Amherst, and there are a big group of undocumented immigrants, even in the university that I attend at UMass. What would be your message on behalf of this event to community of Amherst who are law-abiding citizens who are also happen to be undocumented?
Repeat the question, Dave.
Yes, step right up.
That's an oxymoron. They're law-abiding, but they're illegal.
But yet they're here illegally, right?
They're illegally, they're breaking the law.
That's the key word, yes.
Yeah, this is a safety issue. All right, the reason we have immigration law is to know who's coming across our borders, if they're going to be able to acclimate. We have situations that are taking place across this country now where they're coming in, one, without secure housing, without being able to speak the language, which is supposed to be a requirement, to understand a little bit of our history here and how things work in the United States. And they're being directed by many of our elected officials to go for government subsidies. The strongest our nation can be is when someone comes in and is a productive, integral part. Let's talk about what happens to illegals that do not document, that come in illegally. Let's talk about the damage that happens there. There are coyotes out there that understand that people that come into this nation illegally and trying to be under the radar are susceptible to all kinds of things. Women being raped, children being kidnapped and put into sex rings. All kinds of bad things happen to illegals because they are off the radar. Why do we not talk about that? These are real human beings, and I do care for them too. I have love for all human beings. We are creating a situation that is unsafe for those people in many instances.
Well, what would be your message for those who are non-violent? If my family came here illegally, I must admit, and we worked our way into legal status. And unfortunately, my sister still remains undocumented. She works at a daycare taking care of kids. She commits no crime. Only
Well, she could only one.
Brought here as a child, and it was not her decision to commit a crime as when she was 7 years old. So what would you tell the message for those situations like us? Not those who come here knowing illegally, trying to secure, maybe even trying to escape their, for example, in Mexico, they're trying to escape murders in their families. And I have met people from Mexico who fled cartels out of desperation. And what would be your message? Because there are out there, even in communities, small communities like Amherst and in Northampton, and so forth.
I would say that many times we are a nation of laws, and believe me, we got a lot of them, and most of the time they're just not enforced. I am quite certain there is a process in place for your sister, and I would plead with her to be legitimate and legal as soon as possible for the reasons I just stated, and if it is in our heart to be Americans and to have that fire of liberty inside of you, that must live in her. She's participating in capitalism. That's a good thing. She's working and she seems to be enjoying it. Let's make her an American. You did it. You did it. We want productive people like that. Just knock on the front door, follow the process, and there's people in this country that will help.
Yes.
I have two more questions and then I'm done. The first is you had mentioned a gun control law in Connecticut, correct?
Yeah,
Registry?
a couple of years they were trying to register guns, and we all know what happens after you register. Confiscation. So yeah.
Sure. So was this a law on the books in Connecticut?
Well, no, this is. I don't know all the legislation, and I can't give you chapter and verse right now.
Let's say it was a law passed in the state of Connecticut. You had referred to the 20% that had obeyed that law as sheeple.
Yes.
Now, that also just discussed how illegal immigration was illegal, that a law was being broken, even if we were talking about a productive member of society who frankly is likely paying into the system of America if they have a job, rather than drawn from it. They're actually helping produce an even greater America by being here and working. I'm wondering if there's some difference there in understanding that it is civic and patriotic to resist some laws and not one that would seem to be in support of the American Constitution.
No. I advocate that we follow the law. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution, and the Second Amendment is very short. And I got to remind you, there's one place in the Constitution where the word necessary is used, and that's in the Second Amendment. So, I did refer to those 20% as sheeple. They are. They're spineless little cowards that stand in line to give up the damn rights. So I did. And I'm hoping that events like this that happen in Connecticut bring them around. Because I stick by my statement is that the supreme law of the land is the Constitution. Anything that is a law that is in contrary to the Constitution is no law at all. So those people were standing in line to acquiesce a right. And it's they can do that. They can do it with permission. You can give up a right if you want to. Government can't take it. It's always there. God gave it to us. It lives here. So it's just a matter of whether we assert and express that.
The laws have to be made in pursuance of the Constitution or they're
Right. What is not enumerated is remunerated to the states.
Yeah.
And there is no right to come into this country. You can't compare the two. They're apples and oranges. There is no right to come to America without following the laws of immigration.
I have a question that's a little bit of a left turn. So I noticed the cross on the podium here, and I was curious if you feel like that might deter people who believe in the Second Amendment but may just not be a Christian, whether they are non-religious or Jewish or something else. And if so, what was your thought process to putting it on there?
I didn't put it on there. Our Second Amendment event is not me. I'm just the instigator, and I go around and I poke and prod and get my friends to come in and help me. This is a collection of a rally for them. This is their rally. This podium was donated because we didn't have a podium. I said, I need a podium. And then Mr. Webb, Bill Webb, who comes out and speaks every year, dynamite guy, Christian, and we needed a podium. It's as simple as that. That we're not here advocating the Second Amendment to a particular religion. We're advocating the Second Amendment to every red-blooded American.
Certainly, right.
Yeah.
Would you have asked that question, yes or no?
Or a peace sign.
Yes.
Good job.
Okay.
We have people of all faiths and religions here.
Amen.
That's what I imagine. That's why I asked.
Yeah, and I hope no one's offended. This was, I feel is very appropriate because this nation was formed as a Christian nation. It isn't always will be. That's part of our history, and we won't be rewriting that. So to ignore that, I think, would be dishonest, and I'm about honesty today, right? You got a question? No. You're all set? Well, thank you for coming up from Amherst. I've been over their station, done some programming there before. Melissa, did we get your list?
For now, but I usually have follow-up, so.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you both for being, all three of you, for being a good sport and coming up here and let me disrupt your.
Good job, good job, good job.